I'm here at a military base in northern Taiwan to see how the army is enhancing its combat readiness.
I'm Mick Lout for Taiwan Plus, here in Lviv, western Ukraine. Nearly 1 year into Russia's invasion, I've got a report on how cities like this one are meeting the needs of those displaced by war.
A new report says 10 million Taiwanese people have had their phone numbers leaked. I'll be finding out why.
Plus, while masks may no longer be mandatory, poor air quality in southern Taiwan has many people keeping them on. A warm welcome to Taiwan Plus News. I'm Inka Vat. Taiwan's military carried out realistic combat training drills in the northern city of Taoyuan on Tuesday. The exercises saw soldiers practice shooting while advancing and pushing back an enemy. Our reporter Jaime Ocon was there.
Taiwan is stepping up its combat readiness. Here at an army base in the northern city of Taoyuan, the military is getting ready to simulate how to defend against an enemy force, and that starts with weapons training. Tuesday's event showed off a new shooting training program that puts an emphasis on simulating real battlefield conditions. Soldiers take turns learning how to fire their weapons in different directions. This position focuses on shooting at targets more than 175 meters away. That's the length of 2 football fields. The troops fire from a prone position for better accuracy. Taiwan has been honing its defenses as neighboring China increases its aggressive actions around the country's border. These drills are part of the military's effort to modernize.
多重目标的转移的训练，还有我们的不同姿势的射击的变换，以及障碍板的运用。那加上我们还有加入假弹的训练，心肺功能的加强。
Another portion of the exercise is dedicated to this type of drill, where soldiers race down the field to provide supporting fire. Each round lasts less than 2 minutes, and the fast-paced tempo of the drill focuses on mobility.
比较需要克服是在你要进之后，就是快速移动之后的那个呼吸，要去马上做到静下来的动作。
In recent months, Taiwan has started to reform parts of its military. In December, the country extended mandatory military service from 7 months to a year. And these training reforms are just the latest step. Military officials say that it's drills like these that give soldiers a real sense of a combat scenario, not only improving operations on the battlefield, but also showing just how formidable of a force Taiwan's military is. Alex Chen and Jaime Ocon in Taoyuan City for Taiwan Plus.
US President Joe Biden pledged an additional $500 million in military support for Ukraine during a surprise visit to the country on Monday. The new package will include ammunition, anti-armor systems, and surveillance radars. The US President arrived in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, after taking a train from neighboring Poland. He met his counterpart, Volodymyr Zelensky, and took a walk around the city. Biden's visit comes just ahead of the 1-year anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. During his visit, Biden had pointed remarks for Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Putin thought Ukraine was weak and the West was divided. As you know, Mr. President, I said to you in the beginning, he's counting on us not sticking together. He was counting on the inability to keep NATO united. He was counting on us not to be able to bring in others on the side of Ukraine. He thought he could outlast us. I don't think he's thinking that right now.
Taiwan Plus's Rick Lauert is in Ukraine. He visited a refuge for the country's millions of displaced people fleeing from the war's front lines.
55-year-old Svetlana Reshina left her home in Ukraine's eastern Donetsk region nearly a year ago, when Russia first invaded. This week, shelling forced her to move again, and she took a train further west to the city of Lviv.
Пока, вроде бы как спокойно, слава богу, что хоть не стреляют, это уже хорошо. Вот, потому что у нас там очень так напряженно.
These trains, like the one Svetlana was on, bring more than 1,000 displaced Ukrainians into Lviv each week. Nearly 1 year into the war, and Ukraine is holding fast against Russian advances in the country's east. Their efforts getting a boost from the recent surprise visit by US President Joe Biden to the capital, Kyiv. Biden promised more weapons for Ukraine and more sanctions on Russia to keep invading forces at bay. But even in the relative safety of communities like Lviv, the war is taking its toll. In the last year, Lviv's population has swelled from 800,000 to more than 1.2 million. Many living in more than 100 temporary shelters that have popped up around the region, like this one built with funds from the Polish government. This new facility will eventually be home to 1,400 people. That's of course just a fraction of the millions that have now been displaced by this war. While unprecedented numbers of refugees have fled abroad, many Ukrainians prefer to stay in their home country and choose a city like Lviv, far from the front line with Russia. And the city's residents are making space for their new neighbours.
Потрібно до цих людей ставитися з розумінням, що це не вони хочуть приїжджати, це вимушено, та?
Marina Dutnik is from eastern Ukraine's embattled Luhansk region. She moved into this facility 2 weeks ago, but has been in Lviv since April last year. Her hometown is now occupied by Russian forces.
Тут переживаю, конечно. Дома, как говорить, есть дома. Конечно, душа болит, все наживали, все оставили. Сейчас тут как бомжи. Ну, есть куток, все. Но все равно домой душа тянет.
Marina says she will only return to her town once it is liberated by Ukrainian forces. Like Marina, for many, Lviv has been a place of safety and comfort away from Russian guns. But they will not know true peace until the war is won and they can return home. Rick Lowett in Lviv, Ukraine for Taiwan Plus.
For more on the lives of displaced people in Ukraine, Bing Wang spoke to Rick Lowett, our reporter on the ground in Lviv.
You just told the story of Svetlana. Can you tell us more stories of other displaced people?
Yeah, so the interesting thing about Lviv, this is a really big old city in the west of Ukraine, not that far from the Polish border. The city is swelling in size, as you saw in my report, but the interesting thing is that people are still arriving here from other parts of Ukraine. There's special evacuation carriages in every train that comes from the east of Ukraine. So these are reserved for people that want to flee the war, and they're given free tickets and support along the journey. And they're met here in Lviv by volunteers from the city. And there are still 3 trains a day from the east that have these special evacuation carriages. And there's at least 200 or 300 per day sitting on these trains. So we met a number of people that had just arrived in Lviv from the east. These people are, just as we saw loads of images at the beginning of the war, these displaced people, these refugees, they're carrying everything. The interesting thing is that they have obviously been in certain places throughout the war.
Do you see hope in these displaced people of maybe returning home sometime soon?
I believe the message that we've got from all sorts of Ukrainian people here in Lviv and other people I've spoken to, lawmakers, leaders, everyday people, soldiers, is that, you know, the only thing that they have in their mind is victory, and they're sure of it. You know, this is an existential threat to them and their nation, and everyone is kind of united here in the country to bring that reality. So for the people that we've spoken to, yes, the two things are linked. They do have hope that they will be able to go home, but that hope is linked to the eventual victory of Ukraine in repelling Russian forces and retaking those areas in the east that are currently under occupation.
That was Rick Lowett in Ukraine speaking to Bing Wang. Stay tuned to Taiwan Plus over the next couple of weeks for more exclusive stories as Russia's invasion of Ukraine enters its 2nd year. A new report suggests more than 10 million Taiwanese people's phone numbers have been leaked online. That's according to estimates from a new survey on fraud in Asia. The report also showed Taiwan ranks 2nd out of 6 Asian countries for scam texts and calls. Stash Butler reports.
Text messages told Ms. Xu, who asked not to share her first name, that she had a package waiting for payment in a nearby store. Here's what she found.
这2条很烂的护手霜，那我怎么可能买这样的东西?
By the time she'd opened the package, it was already too late. Ms. Xu found she had no way of getting a refund, and the whole sale was a scam. Ms. Xu's experience is all too common, and if you have a phone in Taiwan, then you get used to the steady stream of scam texts and scam calls. Nowadays, there are some apps that help to block some of them, but people's phone numbers are still out there in scammers' hands, and a new survey backs that up. According to the report by tech company GoGoLook, about 65% of Taiwanese phone numbers have been leaked online. That means more than 10 million people have had their numbers shared. Taiwan is second only to Malaysia, where 73% of numbers have been leaked. That begs the question, where are Taiwan's leaks coming from?
通常我们的外泄会在是大型的网站上面，比如说像脸书或是 Twitter 上面。那因为会员很多，你都会输入你的 email、你的密码，也像是政府资料的可能的外泄。OK， 那这个可能也是一种方式。
The ubiquity of the personal digital gadget and lacking of sufficient internal control system, inadequate legal redress system of personal data leaks could all contribute to the high ranking of Taiwan.
Tech law expert Yachi Chang says a new organization for data security could help crack down on telecoms fraud.
Now the government is proposing to set up an independent data protection body to take charge of the personal data protection. I think it's a good start.
The report released on Monday did actually find that Taiwan got fewer spam texts and spam calls last year compared to the year before. That could mean that Taiwan is on the right track to cracking down on fraud, or it could mean that Taiwan scammers have simply stopped using the phone and moved online. Andy Sher and Stash Butler for Taiwan Plus.
Poor air quality recorded over the weekend in southern Taiwan continues to linger. In addition to this, an arriving cold front has also brought high concentrations of pollutants from China. Joyce Zheng reports.
A thick gray smog looming over southern Taiwan. This was the scene in Tainan on Monday. The area's air quality has been poor the last few days. This is largely due to strong northeasterly winds, which have carried in high concentrations of pollutants from China. Just yesterday, Taiwan dropped its mask mandate in most indoor spaces, further easing COVID-19 restrictions. Still, many residents in the south have opted to tighten their masks due to the haze.
空气的品质都模糊，口罩拆下来吗？不会啊，为什么？为什么？保护自己。
Visibility has been poor here, with drivers in Kaohsiung barely able to see the roads in front of them. Many areas have issued red alerts, including in Jiayi, Kaohsiung, and Tainan. This indicates unhealthy degrees of air pollution, a level which increases the likelihood of adverse effects to the heart and lungs if exposed for over 24 hours. These red alerts refer to the Air Quality Index, or AQI. It is a globally used indicator of how clean the air is to breathe. A score from 0 to 100 is considered healthy or moderate. Scores above 100 are considered unhealthy and are given a red alert. In extreme cases above 301, the air is considered hazardous, and the general public is advised to avoid going outside. And this is how southern Taiwan fared against other cities as of midday on Tuesday. Though some southern cities have dipped below 100, Pingdong County remained on red alert with an AQI of 157. This puts it in the same tier as New Delhi in India or Chengdu in China. The Environmental Protection Agency has forecast that wind conditions in the country's north will help disperse incoming pollutants in the next few days. However, pollutants are likely to linger in downwind locations in central and southern Taiwan. So even though COVID rules have been eased, for many in the south, it seems that wearing masks might still be good for your health. Rick Yi and Joyce Zhen for Taiwan Plus.
Tuesday is International Mother Language Day. To celebrate Taiwan's wealth of local languages, the government has organized a festival in Taipei. As Jean Van Trieste reports, this year's event has put Taiwan's homegrown sign language in the spotlight.
Taiwan has a lot to celebrate on International Mother Language Day. It's home to over a dozen indigenous languages, several Chinese languages, and a unique sign language. Over the weekend, the government held an outdoor language fair to celebrate this diversity. But Taiwanese society wasn't always so understanding. Some sign language users at the fair remember living with stigma or having their needs ignored.
以前的年代是很多人只要一看手语，就全部人就会这样一直看这样，然后我就很不想被看，所以我就会觉得说哦，不想讲手语这样子。我就是让大家可以认识聋人文化，我觉得是一个蛮重要的一个基础。
高中的时候都是在一般的学校就读，并不是启聪学校，也不是启聪班，所以呢，以前上学很辛苦。
Things have changed a lot in recent years. Taiwan Sign Language is now counted among the country's official national languages. Interpreters are at all big political events. The language has its own TV news segments. And from this school year, it's also being taught to hearing children. There's no consensus on how many of Taiwan's roughly 120,000 hearing-impaired citizens know sign language. And some researchers worry that children in particular don't learn until they're in school. Some groups at the fair are working to bring the language to kids.
我们协会在推动亲子手语大概有5-6年的时间了，然后在这个过程，我们跟亲子在互动的这个经验当中呢，我们觉得用戏剧的方式去跟观众做互动，是除了很好的互动方法之外，也是手语传达一个很有力的工具。哈，
国台图希望达到一种共融的阅读方式，所以我们跟配合绘本制作的这个手语小书，有手语的单字，然后上面可以学，透过插图可以学手语，还可以学手语的生字。
With official backing, advocates for Taiwan Sign Language hope to raise its profile and encourage its use all year round. Klein Wong and John Van Trieste for Taiwan Plus.
Just 2 weeks after a pair of massive earthquakes hit Turkey, the same region has been affected by more tremors. 2 quakes with magnitudes of 6.4 and 5.8 struck the southeast of the country on Monday night, near the border with Syria. Buildings already weakened by the previous quakes collapsed, and at least 6 people have died. Hundreds more were injured. The quakes were also felt in Egypt and Lebanon. Turkey isn't the only country experiencing natural disasters. Floods and landslides have killed dozens of people in Brazil. At least 40 people are confirmed dead in coastal Sao Paulo state. Dozens more are still missing. Thousands of people have lost their homes. Rescue workers are struggling to reach the affected areas, and more heavy rain is forecast. US company Micron Technology, the world's 4th largest semiconductor manufacturer, announced last year that it would cut 10% of its global workforce. That plan has begun impacting Taiwan, where Micron is the top foreign employer. Eugene Huang has the story.
These employees are protesting layoffs by US chip maker Micron Technology. They've brought their grievances somewhere they thought might make an impact: the US's de facto embassy in Taiwan. Their top demand: transparency about severance packages. Some workers who were let go were offered decent compensation and asked to sign a non-disclosure agreement. But that wasn't the case for everyone. Many employees are now worried about their future at the company.
每个员工在上班都非常的战战兢兢，因为不知道下一秒谁会被公司进行通知约谈。
Micron is the world's 4th largest semiconductor producer. It's best known for its computer memory products, including DRAM. The chip maker employs nearly 50,000 workers worldwide, with 10,000 in Taiwan. Last December, Micron said it would cut its workforce by 10% in 2023, citing slowing demand for computer parts. Union representatives say the company wasn't being clear enough with employees.
工会这边在呼吁公司应该善尽企业责任，停止裁员，应该公开透明的揭露，以利对等的协商。不反对公司进行优离方案，但是处理过程中应该更具人性化，让想留下来的员工留下来，让想离开的人离开，勿以接下来的考绩不佳来处理员工。
So far, 5 complaints have been filed by Micron workers with their local labor departments. The General Union for Taoyuan City, where Micron's Taiwan headquarters is located, also turned up at the protest in Taipei to show their support.
我们并没有收到就是员工说公司可以给员工有被裁员以外的其他选择。如果公司要主张它是优离方案的话，那照理来讲应该要向工会提出来的诉求，你就公开你的算式，让员工自己来报名。
Micron said the process is in line with Taiwan's regulations, and laying off workers is a necessary step in responding to this year's lower demand. But the company's current approach does not sit well with many of its Taiwanese employees. And the Micron union says it will continue to fight for fair negotiations on severance. Kama Shi and Eugene Huang for Taiwan Plus.
Taiwan's lawmakers have approved a special budget that will see tax rebates handed out to all taxpayers in the country. Legislators have greenlit over $12 billion for the post-pandemic economic recovery plan. It includes a $200 cash rebate for all citizens and foreign nationals with residence permits. The handout is expected to be distributed in April at the earliest. One of China's best-known bankers is still missing. A week after the investment firm he heads said it had lost contact with him. The disappearance of Bao Fan, CEO of Chinese Renaissance Holdings, has left investors spooked. The company's share price dropped as much as 5% at the start of the week. The firm has not said how long Bao has been missing or speculated about why. A number of high-profile tech and finance executives have gone missing in China in recent years and reappeared after being investigated by the country's ruling Communist Party. China's youth unemployment rate has hit 20% because of the COVID pandemic. Taiwan, on the other hand, is at around 11%. But while more young people have jobs in Taiwan, salaries aren't on par with the cost of living.
This isn't a typical Beijing market. People are here lining up for jobs. Affected by the COVID pandemic and global recession, companies had to lay off employees or cut salaries. Now, 20% of young people in China are unemployed, the highest rate ever.
就疫情期间，就是工资拖欠的问题主要是，然后目前也没有给结清，就是说想看看一些其他地方吧。
Job seekers say they're willing to take what they can get, and this month alone, there have been 40 job fairs in Beijing. The jobless rate for Taiwanese young people hit a new low last month, and that's because Taiwan is emerging from the COVID pandemic. But while young Taiwanese are finding jobs, the average salaries are very low. Many first-time employees barely make the minimum wage, which is equal to around $870 per month, and much of that goes towards housing.
Right now, because the minimum wage is inadequate for the cost of living, we have a gap where people have to save for housing and therefore they cannot spend for other basic necessities. So they might still spend on food and clothing, but they might cut down on healthcare, on education, for example.
Despite the rapid growth of its GDP and a yearly increase in minimum wage, Taiwan still lags behind neighbors like Japan and South Korea. Across the strait, China is also playing catch-up, with an economy in post-COVID recovery and a large portion of its labor force still out looking for work. Patrick Chen and Bing Wang for Taiwan Plus.
A multinational project is trying to reintroduce cheetahs to India after the native cheetah population went extinct over 70 years ago. Some of the big cats are now getting used to their new surroundings after arriving from South Africa over the weekend. Eric Gao reports.
Exploring its new home, this cheetah has completed a long journey from South Africa to India.
मुझे बताते हुए बहुत खुशी है कि सभी चीते पूरी तरह स्वस्थ हैं और बहुत ज़्यादा एक्टिव हैं. उनको आज रिलीज़ कर दिया गया है बाड़ों में और यदि आप देखें तो वो बहुत ज़्यादा एक्टिव हैं और बहुत अलर्ट है और परफेक्टली नॉर्मल है.
It's one of 12 big cats that are part of a project working to restore the area's cheetah population. Cheetahs used to be native to this region, but went extinct in the 1950s.
So basically, cheetah have been in decline for the past 13,000 years. South Africa is the first country to reverse the decline of wild cheetah populations, and our meadow population has grown from 217 to 520 in the last 12 years. So we're now in a position to export wild cheetahs to other countries for reintroduction efforts, and this is the first time we have cheetahs available for these reintroduction efforts. Previously, all wild cheetah populations were in decline.
The South African cheetahs join another 8 from Namibia, which were released in India last September. Conservationists hope the different cheetahs can help increase genetic diversity within the species.
For South Africa and India, of course, the meta population comes up. We can have a genetic flow and exchange of animals, which is good for the long-term perspective from the species conservation.
The project is ambitious, and success is not guaranteed. South Africa failed several times at reintroducing cheetahs to the wild over the decades. The conservationists say every country has its own challenges to overcome.
We mustn't think that this is going to work immediately in India. They're also going to have troubles initially. They're going to use different approaches. Some of the approaches we could possibly learn from. But we mustn't think that this is going to work immediately, you know.
For now, the 12 cheetahs are running around their new home, and dozens more are set to join them there over the next several years. Eason Pan and Eric Gao for Taiwan Plus.
Thank you for watching Taiwan Plus News. Remember to download the Taiwan Plus app for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally today, we leave you with images of an annual Siberian festival with people building a town of igloos. I'm Ika Vat. Take care and see you next time.